a wonderful panel here of some lovely individuals who are shy and innocent and have no opinions. Yes. So, the topic of today is you're developers. You've got to build the latest and greatest modern applications. There's all this new tech and technology to learn what's most important. So we're going to discuss that, but first I'm going to let my esteemed panelists introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about them, particularly maybe you haven't been to one of their sessions. I know, for example, Billy just got in, but it's kind of hard to miss him. But I'm going to start at the end there with Tanya. Tanya will introduce herself, and we'll go down the line with Oren, BB, and Billy. And then we'll get to the topic of the day where I will let them answer what they think. And then this is audience participation time. It's going to be lots of fun. I'll come down, walk around, and let you ask questions. So think of a question that you want to ask. I do ask that we don't go, so I'm having this problem in C#, I got this web app. No, that's not what this is for. But if you have that, we do have the What's Next session at the end of the day over in the exhibit hall. We'll have snacks as well as a cadre of speakers and the co-chairs for the conferences where you can ask that last question before you bug out, okay? So try and keep the questions on relative topic, although with my esteemed panelists, I'm not sure we can always stay on topic, but we'll see how we do. So I'm going to start here with Tanya. Please introduce yourself and tell the audience why they care about how smart you are.
Okay, hi. Hi, I'm Tanya Jenkins, and I am a software developer turned application security ethical hacker. I work for Microsoft, and I'm really excited about the security of software and how to teach people how to write better software, and especially excited about DevOps and turning it into DevSecOps.
Oren?
I'm Oren Novotny. I'm Chief Architect of DevOps and Modern Software at Insight, a modern software consulting firm. I'm into many different things, but among them, it's the desktop application. I really believe that desktop applications have a future and that you should not necessarily move everything to the web. They should also be secure. So please come to my talk after lunch and hear about how to modernize your desktop app.
A little pimping, great. BB?
Hello, I'm Bibi, software engineer turned developer advocate these days. Work for a company called Nexmo. We are in London. We do telecommunication APIs. And I get to play with shiny new technology. So I've been playing around with voice, contextual communication, and bots for the past 2 years almost.
And Mr. Hollis?
I'm Billy Hollis, and I think next year, next January, will be my 20th anniversary speaking at the VS Live series of conferences. Wow. So I've been around doing a lot of speaking, but mostly what I do is lead a team that creates very leading edge UX applications. Mostly native, but we typically have a web component to what we do, so I work with lots of different platforms. And I write stuff, and I do video courses. I just finished a video course, recording one for LinkedIn Learning last month. You'll see that next year. And typically tend to take a little bit of a contrarian viewpoint to what most people say, so don't be shocked by that.
All right, so the topic of the day is we have to build modern applications. You guys have limited time. Anybody have a social life? Anybody have family? There you go, right? So currently, because we're not living in the age of Johnny Mnemonic, we can't just jack in, right? We can't just plug into the net and have something new, right? We're not in the Matrix where I say, hey, teach me how to do AI and I know everything. You have limited bandwidth in your brain and you've got to learn something new. What do you do to your existing applications to make them modern? And what do you do with new apps? What's most important? The topics of the day are security, artificial intelligence, that's a big area, and user experience, right? I mean, Apple has made billions and like probably close to trillions now on providing exquisite user experiences. So what's most important? We'll start once again with Tanya, we'll just work our way down and then the free-for-all can start.
I definitely feel that you have to have a certain level of security or you just shouldn't be allowed to play on the internet. And so is it the absolute most important thing? So, I mean, if an app is completely unusable and totally ugly and doesn't do what you want, then there's no point in securing it because no one's going to use it. But definitely, I feel that it can't be priority number 2. It just can't. Because money, because reputation, because risk, because privacy. Okay, I'm going to let someone else speak because I'll just talk the whole hour.
Modern applications need to take user experience very much into account as it helps reduce data entry errors, helps improve efficiencies, and UX goes a very long way towards improving the efficiency of your workforce. So there's a space for UX and design in that all modern apps.
Okay, Bibi, what do you think? I mean, they're talking UX, but hey, if your application's dumb and the user has to do everything, I mean, is this the age of AI?
Well, there is no running away from AI these days, I'm afraid. Like, it's all over the place, so this is definitely the future. But saying that, even with like, you know, all these apps powered by AI, we still need like UX, and we need them to be secure, because no one wants to talk to a dumb bot or about that is giving us a horrible experience. So it is still something very important. I would say they all go hand by hand.
See, you guys are being too waffly.
Agreeable.
Billy, I'm going to give you a chance to say, because I'm getting too much of the, oh, I like my friends and I'm going to be nice to them. Billy?
So he calls on the UX designer at the end, hoping that I'll say, what, UX design, so what? But there is a distinction between what should theoretically be the most important in terms of, and these people are all right about the effectiveness of UX, so I don't really need to get into that. But I also don't like rehashing decisions that have already been made. And I'll be blunt. The decision in the Microsoft community has been that UX does not matter. Okay, that's just the reality. Among the decision makers and among the developers, that's just the way it is. Now, that doesn't mean that individual places can't overcome that and emphasize it for all the reasons they talked about, particularly if you work for a company that sells software packages of some sort. Then if you're not worried about UX, I'm worried about your future. But when it comes to corporate applications, I've discovered through very tough times talking to people that, in fact, most of you don't care, and most of you cannot be made to care. And so I've just learned to accept that. I'm at peace with it.
He's at peace with that. Holy God. Let me sit down. Hold on. I'm getting weak in the knees. So, you know, we were talking about UX, and then now Billy has spoken, I think, the truth, right? How many of you have a designer on your team? Well, the hands at least went up.
No, yeah, but yes, but take away visual designers.
All right, take away visual.
Wow.
Fewer, half.
Yeah. And how many of you had your hands on with designers build mostly web apps? Okay, again. All right, so we got a lot of pictures in Photoshop and CSS and stuff, but probably not what we tend to call UX experience designers, or what's the other name, Billy?
Interaction
designers, who focus on the flow, et cetera. Okay, so we've all said, you know, and I agree, I love great UX, right? But most of us aren't investing in it, so let's throw UX out the door. AI and security. So is security number one if we admit that UX is a fail?
Well, no, I actually wanted to comment about UX. So here's the thing. So a lot of security is not usable. It's just crap. So who here has like at least 100 different passwords that they're theoretically supposed to know, right? Okay, so who here has a completely unique 32 character or longer password that's different for each one of them? Yeah, no one, because we have to use password managers. Who here has a password manager? Yeah!
Yes!
Yeah!
Give yourself applause, yes!
Yes!
All of you didn't raise your hand, you suck. Sorry.
No, but I feel like designers need to take this into consideration. Like security needs to be usable. Just like if you can't use the interface effectively, whatever. But so many people, do you know what the most popular password right now is? Winter 2018. And guess what? In 90 days, what it's going to be? It's going to be spring 2019. And everyone changes their password because password 1 isn't allowed anymore. Right? And we need to make security that's actually usable. And so I think that is like the most important thing facing security in the future, because people don't use two-factor authentication because it's really hard, even though you definitely should. And I feel like usability, specifically in security, is like probably the number one thing for security coming up. Because
I think it's the number one thing for just about everything in theory. But I mean, the reality is that it's hard to do for developer types. That it's a discipline. It takes time and effort to acquire. And you started out talking about the fact that we got limited bandwidth. They have to understand enough about security to secure things, or you know, the consequences are grave. And that AI is kind of speculative, but it's cool, and it fits into the typical mindset of a typical developer. UX does not. In my experience, most developers are convinced they can't really do a good job of it. That is a myth, by the way, but most people are convinced that they can't do it, and that's where, except for a small subset, I can't convince them. I'd agree with you that security's biggest vulnerability as a field is that people don't do the right thing because it's too hard, the user experience is bad.
Yeah. I think we can do more as an industry to help have secure by default. I mean, clearly secure by default is a big thing, but we can always do better. When you just have that file new project, does it have the right security in it? Is it the best, most secure setting?
That's a great thing. I want to get that one. So a lot of us use visual tools, primarily Visual Studio, I assume. Yes. All right. VS Code, etc. Maybe some of you are into ReSharper. I pity those of you still using Eclipse because there's much better things out there, like what JetBrains has. But the point is, a lot of us use modern tools, right? We very rarely start from Notepad. Them, anybody? Woo, Emacs. But the reality is that we start with some tool and we get a template. Now I'm going to pick on web development because the ASP.NET team for years has tried to make this a clickable item. And Tanya will have something to say, I'm here sure as well. And there's this option that says, hey, do you want to make it secure? And what do 99% of us click? No, because that's hard, right?
So true.
So you're saying, so is this Microsoft's fault? Is it the tool vendor's fault?
I think the security industry is completely failing users. And I know that since I work in the security industry that is not a popular thing to say, but so I just taught my mom and my grandma how to use Twitter. And they follow me and it's really cute, and my mom signs her tweets Tanya's mom. But the point is that like I had to give them all these lessons about security and who not to talk to and how to block people and all this other stuff. And like I have to tell my mom regularly, like, no, you have an Apple phone, so if Microsoft tech support is sending you a text on your Apple phone telling you that your Windows has been broken into, but on your phone, like I'm like, so that's impossible, right? But most people don't have a security person like me in their life that they can just call and ask questions to. And I don't think users should have to do this. Like, who here has driven a car before? Do you know every single part and how it works? Do you have to configure your, what are the airbags yourself? No, but you're expected to with a computer. Like, to me, this is completely unacceptable. Like, I get in my car and then it's safe. I bring it to the mechanic once in a while and he does stuff. I give him money and it's done. Great, that's what it should be like for everything.
Okay.
Like,
so, BB, AI, Oren, as UX, you folks think about this from the perspective of Microsoft's building AI into Visual Studio 2019. Is that the solution? Do we need AI to save us from ourselves?
Is there anything to save us from ourselves? No. No, I don't think AI is the answer to everything, first of all. It's nice, it's shiny, but it has to be useful. Don't just like throw it in there. And it's not like something on its own. It is still something that goes side by side with different things. So it won't solve your problems. AI won't solve your security problems. And I personally, forget the engineer, as a user, I wouldn't rely on a program to secure anything for me. My kind of thinking is still not there. I don't trust them straight away. And I have to agree with Bill talking about UX. So even when I have talks about AI and building bots, and I always start with designing for bots, and people usually, especially developers, they hear the word design and they think about design as drawing something, and they're like, oh, it's not a technical talk. Oh, it's not code. I'm like, no. This is the considerations that you need to think about when you're building things. That's UX, right?
Yeah, and that's particularly true in the bot area.
Exactly, because it's a new thing. It's not screens anymore. It's not buttons. It's literally someone talking. Think about that, the amount of things people can say. How are you going to deal with that if you don't think about the user experience and you design properly everything in there? But we still have some work to do in there to convince them to step there.
Okay, you said something, and then Billy, and I'm going to feed you a little bit. Don't forget, you want to say something first?
Yeah, just to kind of expand on the bot thing, because if you go to conference keynotes from major vendors, then you will see a lot about bots, and there's the classic, I'm going to do this demo in 10 minutes because that's all the time attention that I've got. So they do a complete demo building a bot in 10 minutes, and they gloss over every bit of what it takes to actually build a good bot. Learning to use the API is not the hard part for bots. Figuring out how to design and build the content's the hard part. And I've never seen a conference session that really got very deep into that problem.
I wanted to echo that because we build quite a number of chatbots in production. So my company and my team, I can say this publicly, was responsible for the TD Ameritrade chatbot that has been out there. So the one that allows you to buy and sell stock on Twitter, Facebook, wherever, this multi-channel. It uses Azure Bot Framework, but design and UX was key to that. It's the tech you can build, but understanding the expectations, the flows, what the cards should look like, how users are going to interact with it was, we couldn't have been successful without that.
Well, I bet we can find out from the audience that they already kind of keyed to this. The last conversational bot that you used as a person, not in part of your job, did it suck? Hands please for those that the last conversational bot didn't help you a bit. How many people have talked to a bot that was actually helpful? A few hands.
And a lot of you are avoiding the bots.
Yeah, as a rescue,
is that true?
avoiding bots at all.
Given the choice, and that thing that pops up on a website that says, "Would you like to chat?" and you're like, "Screw off," right? Okay.
Okay. And how many of you are a bot? Okay, yeah.
So I caught something interesting. There was this underlying current that I heard from all of you. And I'm going to go to Billy as the elder statesman. He's been around. Why do we need security? Is it because we suck? In other words, is there a human problem that we're trying to solve with technology?
Yeah, the human problem is that some people suck. And in modern society,
Are you sure it's just modern, Billy?
Well, no.
I can sit down now. My job's done.
I was actually going to talk about over history. Modern society, starting in about early in the 20th century, became a very high trust society. Is that when you walk into a store, you don't assume that they're going to harvest your credit card data and make off with it. You don't assume they're going to try to steal from you. You don't think you're going to be waylaid when you go, down into the mall. So that high trust drew us into an era when software came where we sort of assumed it. And a lot of our stuff is built with the idea that trust should be kind of the default. But in fact, in the modern, completely connected world, every society has bad actors. The world has plenty of bad actors scattered around it. And now we've enabled the bad actors to attack us all. Once upon a time, we could afford a high trust society because the bad actors were off on another continent. We had fewer bad actors here. Now, any bad actor anywhere in the world could get to us. And that's what makes it serious.
All right. So we've heard a lot from them. Do you have any questions? All right, we'll go right here. I'll hold it off.
Okay. So my question about security, thinking about the Facebook hack, Cambridge Analytica, that whole thing, listening to Christopher Wiley recently talking about his proposal is kind of restrictions. He said when you get in an airplane, it's regulated. Do we need regulations, or what level, to Billy's point, the bad people are now everywhere. What are the solutions for those regulations, or a different solution?
Anybody? Tanya?
So the Facebook Cambridge Analytica thing is a privacy thing. And so when you use a free service, you are paying with your personal information. That's what you're paying with, right? They don't want to tell you that, but that's what Facebook literally uses. Like, you can do an ad down to the point, like the targeted ad is so useful. I used to be a professional musician. I tried to sell my albums, and it was so great because I could just target the 2 people in my city that definitely would love it, and then they would both buy it. But all of that means that we're paying in a different way. So I think that the public needs to be informed about privacy a lot more. In Canada, we're actually adjusting the school system to teach children about privacy from very early on and bring it so that they're digitally literate when they graduate high school. Like, even when they're little, I want them to know. Sorry.
No, you're doing great. I'm just,
Okay, and then for security of applications, so I'm a giant nerd, and part of my job is I get to share all my research for free. So I'm actually like publishing like a secure coding guide for free. I've published, so it's like 20 rules. Just follow these rules, and your app will not be crappy. And then like I have security requirements. You could just copy and paste it into your project plan, and then like you just follow these things, and your app it's not going to be bulletproof, but it's going to be like pretty darn good. Yeah, and then I have like a bunch of security concepts and what they mean and how you apply them, and I feel like this guidance isn't provided right now. Like you go to school and it's not provided, so I'm working with the Canadian School Board to like change that. So we never teach Hello World without the actual like, so you know, first thing you do, you print to the screen, Hello World, right? What's the next thing you do? You ask them their name, and then you read it in, you don't validate that input, I'm sure it's fine. And then without output encoding it, you put it back on the screen, and then you're like, that's the most beautiful cross-site scripting I've ever seen. And so like we're going to change it so our school system, like you learn the right way, and right now you learn the wrong way. And so that's why I feel the problem is that we're literally teaching how to develop software wrong.
who's next?
I think specifically with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica and some of the other things we've seen out there, these are business problems, not technology ones. The technology one is just a means to an end. You know, 50 years ago, it could have been a hustler, swindler stealing information, or you had greedy people like Ponzi in the 20s or whatever earlier with the original Ponzi scheme. You've had crooked people stealing and doing nasty stuff. You can, whatever you think about Facebook, they're just taking advantage of what the law allows them to do, but they're making money. They're beholden to their stockholders. And
So
society.
is Congress the solution? Is Congress the solution?
It's hard to say. That's a tricky problem.
Can I?
Who wants more regulations from our Congress? A bunch of old white dudes are kind of
I can't,
grumpy.
what did he say?
As an old white guy. Okay, I got some of this, but I'll let anyone else want to say something about the first question?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I would
Bibi.
like to add something. I just want to throw the word ethics here, because obviously now in society it's hard not to give our personal data. We are on social media. People know where I am, my location, because it's there out on my Twitter. I'm at VS Live Orlando. They can literally track me to here. So with AI, there is a lot of talk about ethics. Well, not a lot as it should be, but it's still like there is like this group of people talking about that, but not in the public there for everyone. So we need to consider ethics more in tech, especially with what's coming in the future. There will be always bad people, I'm sure of that, but we need to consider what is ethical, what is not, in a way to help with all of these matters.
Billy? And
Yeah,
then
and I'm very skeptical about depending upon politicians to come up with solutions to complex problems like this. Being in healthcare, we have HIPAA. Anybody have to work with HIPAA? Number one, does it help very much? Number two, is it a big pain in the behind?
how many of you are compliant? Don't raise your hands.
Okay, so yeah, so that was a good faith attempt to solve the problem of protecting people's health care, and the politicians did their best, and it really didn't help much. And so understand that, look, I know some of these people, and despite their public face, some of them seem to have their heart in the right place, but they don't have the background. You got to realize that almost all of them are lawyers. They went to law school. They don't know anything about technology, and they're under pressures from all kinds of people, and they don't know how to sort out the self-interested BS from the more society-centric good stuff. So it's not really a job that I trust them to do very well. It certainly doesn't hurt to float some things, but in my mind, they need to be controlled and modest to begin, rather than trying to find an all-encompassing solution, because the chances that they'll find that one that's both workable and practical is really just not very good.
Or worse, they'll find themselves doing what Australia just did this morning, which was to say, make the companies put back doors in pretty much everything. Basically, if they tell you to. That's a nasty piece of thing this morning.
Ooh, evil. Did you want to add one last thing?
I actually, so you were talking about ethics, Bibi. So a big concern in security is AI, and I'm wondering, Skynet, if you feel that like potentially in the future a big risk to security could be artificial intelligence.
I was in a conference a few weeks ago, and the theme was artificial intelligence, but what they did is the keynotes, they took it all like a bit extreme. The keynotes were like AI and what's happening in biology and people with like chips in themselves. And some of the questions about ethics is like, if you can modify something with your baby, you know, before they are even born, is that something, because it is your baby, is that okay because you want to have the best baby ever? Or can you even decide for that human being? Mm-hmm. Because it's still a complete human being. Would you, so what is like the answer to that? So yeah, AI and the whole...
Well, there's a lot of concerns that, so AI is not that smart yet, because it's going to be...
It's not.
But once it gets smart, what if it's like these humans are such a pain? Like, this is a serious concern, right? Like, who here is like, maybe AI won't have my best interests at heart? Who thinks that this is possible?
I've seen the auto-driving cars, and I'm not worried yet.
So along the thread of having to learn a lot of things, and Connect was Tuesday, WinForms, Xamarin Forms, WPF, WinUI, and we've heard a lot of talk around this XAML standard. The web has a standard. It uses HTML. It makes it very easy for all JavaScript developers to do all things across all the...
Wait, easy? It makes it easy.
For them, I don't do JavaScript, so I don't know. Fair. So is there a way that we, the developers, can help push this XAML standard and make it a reality? Because having to understand the difference between WPF, Xamarin Forms, now this WinUI, and whatever new flavor of UI framework comes down the pipeline makes it harder for us to deliver good user experiences to our users. So
Is XAML the answer?
well, I think it's not a question of is XAML the answer, it's a question of what can we do to help make a standard so that it becomes easier for us to deliver value.
Okay. Oren, you or Billy want to start with that? 'Cause that's your...
So yeah, interesting question. So yeah, I agree that there needs to be a easier way of moving forward. There's a lot of different flavors right now, and if you ask me today, I'll say use the one that you're already using. You know, don't rewrite, and we'll talk more about that at 1 o'clock. But the going forward, yeah, I think that Xamarin Forms is interesting for certain kinds of applications, but it is a different flavor of XAML, and I think that's what you were asking about, than modern fluent XAML, I think that's today's word for it, versus WPF. I would love to see convergence. I'm not sure what it's going to take to do that, but I think the fact that it's all open source now is a great first step.
Billy, do you want to add anything?
No, I would say roughly the same thing, is that the community will now have the influence required to push it in that direction if the community wants to. Now, that is very much an open question to me about whether the community will care about that. Because, as I talked about earlier, I think there's a certain choice that has been made in the community, is that they will just, look, 90% of the XAML apps that I see could have been written in Windows Forms, they just have nicer colors. That people, when they start using these technologies, only a very small fraction of people use it to its potential to provide great experience for the users. Part of the problem is they don't really have the examples in many cases of how you would do that. They don't necessarily construe it as their job. Their managers don't reward that as opposed to grinding something out this week. They've got deadlines. You've always got deadlines to meet. So learning more about the platform for UX is hard. So yes, the potential is there in the open source world to move us in that direction. Whether or not there is a critical mass of the community to apply that pressure is very much an open question to me, because people don't care.
Back onto the security component. We've been spearphished several times, and it seems to be a particular demographic that keeps getting spearphished. In 50 to 75 years, do you think security is going to be less of an issue or more of an issue after certain people roll out of the environment?
So are you saying it's only old farts they target?
I think you're trying to say when the old people retire. I feel like that's what you're trying to say. I think that if we update our education systems, we're going to graduate people that are digitally literate. I think if we finally get some standardization, like you're talking about standardization on user experience, well, guess what? We're following all of you around, trying to secure you. And so when all of you are like, we're going to do 5 different versions of this one JavaScript framework or 20, we freak out. And for instance, like, so all the JavaScript frameworks scare the crap out of me all the time because they're like, from a security standpoint, except for maybe Angular's like, we're going to try. I'm like, thank you. But most of them are just like, we don't even care. So do I think it can improve? Yes, if we standardize. Like, so computer science is super, super young as a science. And then security as part of it is like a baby. It's an infant. It was just born. So if you look at like biology or all of those other things, those are hundreds of years old. Computer science is like what, 40, 50? Like 60, 70 if you count like the original computer. So like we're so young, and then yeah, we need standards. We really, really need them.
But I would go further and I'd say I don't think it's necessarily about when the older generation stops using technology. I think that it's maybe hubris to say that we won't fall for similar kinds of things as technology evolves. I mean, if you just have to put yourself in their shoes, email is new to them, or even the concepts are new. They didn't have what this was when it was growing up, or if it was around, it was in some university somewhere. I don't know what's going to be out there in 25 years. So, there's going to be some magical 3D realistic hologram material thing that maybe I'm pushing this and it's going to go rob me. Like, we just don't know, and it's something that maybe the generation that grew up with it would be more attuned to and be like, yeah, that's clearly phishing, that's wrong. But I think with the way things are changing or evolving, there's always going to be threats, and I don't think it's necessarily a matter that, this particular, I don't see a cutoff in that sense.
Yeah, I'd agree that there are I see a lot of millennials who don't think about it. If a website asks them for a birthday, they don't think automatically, as I do, to give a fake one. They don't realize that you don't want to do that. So, but there is some age differentiation, no doubt about it. But it's a problem in general that I think while the 75-year thing, I think it will get better, but I think it'll get worse before it gets better. And the reason I think that is that the bad guys haven't applied AI to their efforts yet. So imagine an AI that scans every open video camera it can manage to find, uses facial recognition to figure out who it is, and finds out when the guy's checking into a hotel with his secretary, and sends him the thing that says, okay, I'll destroy this video if you'll send me 3 Bitcoins. Okay? That's coming. All right, somebody will do it. And how many, I mean, you don't even realize those cameras are there. You don't even know. So no, it's going to get worse.
Or even a little easier, combine that with phishing, and they send them, hey, click here to approve your expense report, and it looks more realistic because it's based on timing of something where it's more relevant.
There's all kinds of opportunities there with the information gathering and applying AI to it to really do some pretty nasty things.
Also, I feel like because we are getting lazier with technology. Technology is getting better, so we are getting lazier. It's convenience. We want things to happen. And as a millennial, like, I know, you just want like, okay, whatever. You're asking me for this thing. I'm going to click on those things. Just give me what I want. So I think it could be even worse in the future with this young generation. And they will grow up, talking to digital assistants. There will be machines listening all the time because they just grew up with that. They grew up with Alexa looking for stuff on them and booking stuff for them. So that's a great.
But they'll get burned, and that'll help.
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of towards my question as well. The whole idea of privacy or expected privacy, doesn't that facilitate bad actors and bad behavior and things like that? Billy, in your example, somebody can look at webcams and see whether the boss is taking his secretary to an hotel. It's like, if he knows that information is public information, he probably wouldn't do that, right? And you can extrapolate that to most bad behavior, right? People don't want to be known as a bad actor. I don't think they do. So isn't the expectation of privacy really facilitating bad behavior?
Oh, so should we just, dance in
Like
public
anonymous
and then it won't
users
matter?
on
And go
Reddit?
through the scanners naked and then
I'm not
it's just
sure I
done?
want to live in a panopticon, thanks.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
I don't want to live in a panopticon, thank you very much. That's the term. It's one of the, I'm drawing a blank on the philosopher who came up with it. It was in the late 19th century, but it's this idea of like prisoners under constant surveillance are going to behave better because they're always under a watchtower. And that's effectively what I think you're describing here. If you have privacy, then or not, or people are going to behave better. And maybe you are, but it's a pretty steep cost.
Is it 1984? I mean, is it?
Not quite. I'm sorry?
What is the cost?
What is the cost?
Happiness.
Oh, interesting.
I think privacy is pretty important.
Okay, who doesn't want to go with their privacy? You want to be private. Okay, who's tired of raising your hand?
Whenever people say I don't have anything to hide, it's fine. Then I ask, so do you have windows where you live? Yes. Do you have blinds on them? Yes. Why? Why do?
Because I don't want to scare my neighbors.
But most people have blinds or curtains for a reason.
I'm coming, you're coming, here we go, and question time from Dan.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of have a counterexample that goes against what you're saying and with what he was saying a little bit. I had $1,000 charged against my account, and then I went to the police to report it, and they said no way to trace it at all. And that just seems ridiculous to me, that if that had happened as a street crime, there would have been some action, there would have been something going on, but since it's digital, people are just complacent about it and allowing this to go on. And I think that, especially in a financial transaction, you should have some accountability, that if you're going to be in my wallet, I need to know who you are.
So you want a cybersecurity force always tracking if I'm buying?
I think that we should, I think there should be some, well, and even spam, like, I'm really excited about the new regulations in Europe and just want them here. Because I want, if somebody's going to be attacking my time, attacking my attention, I want a name. I want an identity. I want some sort of accountability to line up with it.
Was this cryptocurrency? Like what?
No,
like
it was just it was a phishing thing. That it was a well-timed email related to another scam,
Okay.
and then my wife said, "Oh yeah," and then it gave bank information, and we got it reversed. The bank actually caught it. But
Yeah.
I wanted prosecution. I was mad. I had $1,000 ripped from my wallet, and people were standing by, and I thought, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
Why can't we live this way?
The banks actually find it significantly cheaper to do nothing
Yeah.
than to investigate. It'll cost more than $1,000. No, there should be a trail. Security's opinion is there should be an audit trail always. I agree with you 100%.
Anybody else on that? Okay, I'm walking. I got
I
another
think it
question
gets down
in the
to
back.
incentives as well. I mean, where does the cost come from? As Tanya was saying, like costs the bank, even if they have to reverse it and they pay it out of pocket because the money was actually gone, even if they're responsible, the $1,000 they're going to give back to you it's still cheaper than the cost of the investigation. So until the incentives are altered or the structure, like even for credit card theft or merchants, like the banks aren't usually responsible. You're not. They'll just charge back the poor merchant and they get screwed.
Yeah.
But then, so in aggregate, their costs, and we all pay it in the form of higher prices in society, but the penalties aren't given to the place that can take the most action, so the incentives aren't there to make the system more secure.
What he said.
Okay. And I have a true story about that, but I'll let this gentleman ask this question.
Yes, I have a security question as it relates to app development, and as a speaker of that, reverse development, and also how can you alleviate that reverse engineering of an app?
Okay, so you want to know about reverse engineering? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Yes, the best way to alleviate the risk of reverse engineering of an app?
Oh.
Okay, are you worried about like code obfuscation? Is that what you're thinking about? So you're worried about the fact that it's easy for me to decompile a .NET app, for example?
Yeah.
Oren, Tanya, anybody?
There's a bunch of products that you can use to obfuscate your code.
Do they
Definitely.
work?
Varying levels. It depends on how badly someone wants it. Like if the Chinese government is like, we would like to see your code, they can spend forever deobfuscating it, right? But if it's, you know, like if I'm like, hey, that dude's got a cool little app, I want to see what it is, and then it's hard, I'll give up. Right, so it's about the levels.
I think it depends on who your, you know, to your point, is what your threat actors are and what is the data, what are you trying to protect? Are you trying to protect the algorithm, the intellectual property in the program, which case maybe, you know, there are copyrights and trademarks and other, you know, lawsuits that you can file if someone is found to infringed. If it's data in memory, you have to look at things like hardware level secure enclaves, if you have that available, or trusted platform modules. Or in other common scenarios, you just have to assume, you know, look at physical control of the device. There's a reason, you know, you can trust your server generally because it's in a closet that you control with a physical key. But if you have code that's distributed to an end user, really that device can never be trusted. And therefore, any code in memory or anything on it, you have to assume can be figured out. And you know, with a decompiler, whether it's listening to the RAM and memory, there's all kinds of crazy stuff you can do. And you just have to build your security model assuming that that data and that end public client is just not trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I did want to, the gentleman's thing about the money, you guys talked about the repercussions. So for years I've bought a certain laptop type, I'll let you guys figure it out. And I just went to buy a new one on Cyber Monday. They canceled my order because my primary mail delivery is a UPS store that I've had for more than 15 years, but they're tired of the chargebacks and thefts caused by deliveries to UPS stores, hotels, and freight forwarders. They will not send it to those addresses. So this is where the vendor has had enough of just the paperwork, the hassle. They've rolled over and said, we'd rather not take the money than deal with the possibility, even though they can look at my history and see that they've shipped them there for the last 10 years. So there's these weird changes and they're making some people unhappy. We're suffering for the bad actors.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about security, and my understanding is that like some of the phone companies, they've got some technology they're working on now so that people who spoof addresses, you know, or phone numbers, I get a call from the hospital, well, I'm going to answer it, right? You know, if somebody has been hurt. So they're looking at kind of giving us some indication now through technology that, hey, the number is really coming where it's coming from. Do you see something like that with the internet? I know China kind of tries to control what they're doing, that the internet kind of gets broken up into small internet type things where they're authenticating the user who is logging into the internet, and you can't get on the internet to be able to then interact with other individuals so that they're able to identify specifically who that individual is. Do you think security will go to that level?
I would just turn that around a little bit and challenge that to say that if you have to have a positive identification to be on the internet at all. That gets back to, you know, what Billy was saying earlier about, are you assuming people are good or are you assuming people are bad? Because I'm going to say, look at the country of Iran or China or any other regime and say, oh, guess what? I know who you are. I'm going to track everything that you're doing, and you're not allowed on the internet. You know, so I think that you have to be careful of unintended consequences, and that there is a place for anonymity and things like Tor and other networks to try and make sure that there are fundamental freedoms and access to information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's sort of like the opposite of why the internet was invented. It's more like what you're describing is an intranet, which would be like a private place where people are invited, like you're allowed to play. And we could totally make one. There's almost all of the networks are darknet, like intranet, like Microsoft has our own network that all the employees play on, and we do whatever we do there. Mostly it's nerding. But like, there's all sorts of them all over the place. So we could make one for marketplaces, right? And then you could decide as a user that you want to go there and buy your shoes.
Well, isn't that what we have with the app stores? I mean, for example, Apple has a very controlled thing. Of course, it's going to court now to see if it's actually legal that they can control the walled garden. Is that something? The walled garden? Is that acceptable? What if they say you're not supposed to? I mean, what do you think?
I'm sorry, they control the walled garden?
It's a walled garden. In other words, Apple completely controls the app store and the rules, what apps they pull. Tumblr's client because of pornography, supposedly. Mm-hmm. They've not let other vendors have apps that they feel are competition. And so it'd be a challenging story. But you can't buy an app from the official Apple App Store unless you have an identity. In other words, they're doing that.
Yeah.
Is that working? Is that good? Or?
it's working, but it means there's no real competition, and it means that, like, let's say I want to have a phone that isn't Android or Apple, what would it even be?
So then that brings me back to a theme on some of this of bad actors versus good actors, humans versus machines, is the fact that we're inherently bad or we're inherently good? Or is it greed the problem if we had a more socialist system on the internet?
So are we debating Hobbes versus Locke again?
Okay, I'll stop the philosophy. Anyway, we have another question.
So to stay on the security thread, I had the opportunity to listen to somebody from Microsoft talk about blockchain, and she stated that she believed that blockchain was basically the security that the web should have had, and it's basically Web 2.0. Can we speak to, because everyone knows Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is blockchain, but Bitcoin is not blockchain, right? Exactly. So what can we do as developers with blockchain to make our apps more secure?
Oh,
Do you want? No, just because BB is supposed to be doing and I'm like, I feel like I'm just doing all the talking, and sometimes I'm rude like that, and I'm like, no, other people on the panel are totally allowed to speak.
Basically, I know blockchain, I know the name, and Bitcoin, so I'm not
Okay,
an
cool.
expert.
I don't know if it's actually block space chain or blockchain, so please share.
I don't know. I say I haven't. I'm looking for. It's a solution looking for a problem.
Oh. Anything, Tanya, you want to add? So
No, so cryptocurrency is like electronic currency that is not a fiat currency, that doesn't have any sort of backing like gold or anything like that. There's no country that's like, we're going to pay you back if this goes to hell. And then it uses blockchain. And the idea of blockchain is it is like this encrypted thing, there's a public ledger that everyone can see, right? And you can use that, for instance, like the gentleman that was over there that got robbed, and that's awful. If they were tracking transactions on a blockchain, and especially if it was distributed, right? So right now, a lot of systems are centralized, which means if that gets knocked out, you're in big trouble. But the whole thing about blockchain is that it's all over the place, and all sorts of people have copies of it. And if you don't do it like Bitcoin so that it's going to kill the entire environment, like it can be quite efficient, especially if like after a certain number of transactions, they fall off the end or something, or it gets archived or whatever, so you're not doing like this giant thing like Bitcoin is. But like this could be a way for us to document things so that the public can go and look.
But in fact, you know, and my snark notwithstanding, it is actually used in some small cases, like certificate transparency. So the certificate authorities are required to document certificates that they issue in a globally distributed ledger. It's just, you know, certificate authorities are not, you know, they are the root, so they do not have any other central database. That there's no system that they're recording stuff in. It is a global distributed ledger. I'm not sure if that's specifically a blockchain-based technology, that I don't remember, but they are using similar techniques for that purpose, and it's for traceability and auditability in case of, you know, did someone get a certificate issued incorrectly by somebody else, and it's to have that paper trail.
Mm-hmm. The thing about blockchain, though, is a lot of people, like, so developers are awesome at the thing that they're doing, and right now they're learning about like how to do blockchain, but they're making all the same mistakes that they made before. So a lot of the new like smart contracts and things like that in Ethereum are unfortunately really insecure. So don't forget all the things that you learned about application security when you make a blockchain thing. All the same risks still apply. Please be safe.
But I guess that's the point, right? So like, what is the security industry doing to help promote that as a potential security measure or thing, and then what can we as developers, like how do we consume that? Like we hear this buzzword, but like how do we actually consume it to make, like will it actually make my app more secure? Like you said, it won't, because if I don't do things correctly, but if I don't know that and it's not publicized, this in my mind is a way for us to start to get as app developers down a better secure path.
Yeah.
How do we do it?
I don't think that you need a blockchain for every single thing. It depends on the thing that you're doing. So just the same as like, so if you pass an anti-cross-site request forgery token, you only pass it if you're actually like doing something important like a transaction, right? So you don't just blockchain everything. And I think that part of the problem with the blockchain is that it is a buzzword, and that Like you could make a drinking game out of it and everyone would be drunk by 9. And, but like it's just said so much. Like I feel like if you say it, all the C-level executives from like a 1 mile radius just appear and they're like, it's gonna save the world. And so because it's like that right now, I feel that it's problematic, and I think that more developers like you perhaps need to make open source examples of like cool things that you can do with it. No, but like I started an open source project like just over a year ago, and then now I was here yesterday speaking about it. I never knew any of that awesomeness would happen. All of you are capable of being up here, and all of you are capable of creating super cool things out of nothing. Like you're software developers, your job is literally making something awesome out of literally nothing every day, right? So I would love it if some of you made a cool blockchain thing, then showed me. And then I'll tell you why it's insecure.
Okay, I got time. One more question, I'm gonna do one more, and then I got a wrap up for you all to speak about.
Heard you bring up a scenario, I think it was you yesterday, thank you. About dark web monitoring. You brought up a scenario where somebody, their data was found on the dark web and you had to go into emergency mode over the weekend. How important is dark web monitoring, and who is it important for in order to be proactive, and when a breach or a loss of data occurs, you know, to do something about it as quickly as possible, stop the leak?
Okay, so if your data is for sale on the dark web, how do you find out? Or like, how do you monitor the dark web generally so that you can make sure? So it's hard because there's a crazy echo because the things are behind us, so I'm having a little bit of trouble. So I just want to make sure I understand the question. Can you repeat it?
So number one is, you probably want to explain if you believe the dark web is real. Number two,
Okay.
how do you find your data? How would you know if your data was on the dark web? And then finally, is there a way to monitor it? Because I know there's companies selling, I see the commercials, you do, right? Should I sign up for that service? So that's
Okay, so I worked somewhere, and my data of where I was working was for sale on the dark web for $50. $50. I know. I felt like the humiliation was even worse that they weren't asking very much money. Okay, so first, the dark web is like a private network. Like it's not the internet. It's not publicly accessible. You have to use a Tor browser, which anonymizes you. You want to have all sorts of other security if you go there. There's good things there and there's bad things there. Like there's political activists from countries where that you're not allowed to say the word politics. And then there are also bad things there. Like if you want to hire murderers, apparently you can literally do that there. I don't go on the dark web because I don't need any murdering happening. And also in my country, we're allowed to say whatever we want. But there's stuff there. There's various reasons to go there. So I hope that is enough of like a crash course on the dark web. So then if your data is for sale there, so things you can do are one, like monitor Twitter. It sounds really silly, but that's how we learned. Monitor Reddit. We got a call from a big magazine asking us to comment on it. That helped notify us. But if you want to know before that, things you could do is, so Canada has a thing called CCIRC, so CCIRC, and they have a free thing that you can sign up for if you're in Canada, and America has one too. It's something CERT. I could look it up for you after. And you can sign up for threat notifications and other things. And so CCIRC will actually like take care of Canadian businesses and let them know like scary stuff happened. And also you can, I'm trying to think of more ways, but basically like, so I saw a talk by someone from Trend Micro named Sasha something, and she was amazing, and her job is to actually like do threat monitoring for Trend Micro. And she was telling us like, so she does threat monitoring like for their product, but she finds like murderers, and she has had all these people arrested by doing her job. Like she's a badass. I wish I could remember her last name, but the point is like there are feeds that you can pay for and monitoring services that you can pay for. Like I work for Microsoft and we make our own threat feeds because I don't know if you know, we make this little operating system and it gets attacked sometimes, and then like we want to protect our customers as best we can, so like we're all over that. I don't think we sell that though, unless you just like get Windows, and then Windows Defender has all that built into it. But for your data specifically, yeah. We could talk after in more detail.
Okay, so we have time. I want each of the speakers, we talked about UX, AI security. We don't have one that's most important, right? We kind of agreed that. So it's going to be, it depends, a canonical consulting answer. That said, you might be thinking, okay, I'm good on security, but I need to know more about UX or AI or something. So I want you all to recommend your favorite way. If I said, I'm a newbie in this area. Where do I start? Is there a website, a book, or something you would recommend? Pimp your own content, pimp other people's content. I'll start with Oren, then Tanya, then Bibi, and I'll finish with the elder statesman to get the closing remarks. So, Oren?
I find Twitter is a really good place to keep up with things. It's where I find all the the latest bits, and I follow people who are much smarter than me, and I just pretend sometimes. So I'd say find people that you like and see what they say on Twitter, and maybe create a separate tech list so it can keep separate from the rest of the noise that you might have on there, and kind of skim through some of that.
Okay, Tanya?
If you want to learn more about the software of security, besides following me and reading my blog and watching my show, you should join the Open Web Application Security Project. In Orlando, you have a chapter of OWASP. It's free, they give you free pizza. We have 250 chapters around the world. There's definitely one in your city.
How many live in Orlando?
Okay, so how many of you live somewhere in America? Because we have like 100 chapters here. Yeah, so whatever major city you're in, there probably is one, and they would love to have you show up. And everything's free, and we're dying to have more people join us. So check out OWASP, like OWASP. I know it's the worst acronym ever.
Bibi?
Right, so Twitter, I love Twitter. So there is Twitter, follow the right people to find stuff. The good thing about AI, because it's the new shiny thing, so every big player is trying to be there. Documentation, you have like Microsoft has great documentation, and by documentation I don't mean just, oh, these are APIs, but a whole set of courses. They have the whole, is it a machine learning course now, which is free and for public, so you can take the course. I think it takes maybe 2 to 3 months, and by the end of it you get like some little certificate saying you did that. Google, Amazon with Alexa, they all have really great documentation, and then you have the people, like you have maybe MVPs from Microsoft, Alexa champions if you are more interested in the Alexa. So these are people who did a lot of work on Alexa, so they have like blog posts, they're out there on Twitter or on YouTube. Yeah.
Thank you. And Billy, can you wrap us up?
Yeah. On the security and AI stuff, I think that's kind of traditional areas that most developers are accustomed to learning new things. There's a lot to learn, but I think that the way you have learned things in the past is very applicable to learning security and AI. So, I mean, there are interesting nuances in each, but their recommendations are good. UX is different. UX is a discipline, and it doesn't really depend on technology, and it doesn't vary that much over time. It is simultaneously somewhat harder to acquire capabilities there than it is in some of those areas. But those capabilities then last you to the end of your career, because UX design is based on how the human brain and visual system works. And that doesn't change with changes in technology. So I think it's worth the investment. First, destroy the myth that you can't learn it. 80% of developers, I train developers in doing UX design. The objective is not to become a professional designer, just not to suck as much as you do now. So if you go into it with that attitude, there are various good books to learn. Somebody here was talking about the universal principles of design, which I have been recommending a long time. There's a nice list of good books. At the risk of sounding, I hate self-promotion, okay? But I was at LinkedIn Learning last month doing the recording for a course called UX Design for Developers and Other Non-Designers. It's about 2.5 hours of video with what I think are the most important things to know. That'll be out sometime early next year. So you might look for that. You can check my Twitter feed or whatever. And I think that'd be good just because I've tried to encapsulate the things that I think get people kind of pushed in the right direction and pack them down into as small a space as I can. So maybe that would help.
Well, that'll help. Okay, and then to point out, Tanya, you have a talk this afternoon, yes, or are we done? Yes.
I do. It's called Pushing Left Like a Boss. If you want to know all about what application security is and how to go and start doing it Monday morning at work, come see it at 2:30.
Oren, you have a talk at 1 p.m.
Modernizing enterprise apps for everyone here still with WinForms and WPF and wants to know where to go with that.
Bibi, are you done?
I'm done.
She's
This
done
is-
sessions-wise. And Billy, you have another session today.
No,
two.
I'm done today.
You're done today, but you have an all-day workshop tomorrow, which you can, if you didn't buy and you can get your boss to let you stay, you can still get a seat if you're here. Highly recommended.
It is on that subject of the entry point for developers to understand about UX design.
Once again, thank you so much for coming to VS Live. Thank you for the panel. Give a warm applause for my panelists.